You all most likely recall Bob Wee from 2022. It's acceptable if you don't know who Bob Wee is, especially if you're new to the area. This is essentially a former employee of Ripple. He was also giving us some fairly huge hints about ISO 2022 back in 2022. Now, a huge thank you to Anderson for taking these screenshots. In fact, he has kept these for a long time. Actually, this post is brand new. This is from this year's April. Technically speaking, though, a lot of these writings discussing ISO 2022 with Bob Way date back to 2022, which is what I'll be talking about in this piece. However, there is a significant clue about ISO 2022 from Bob Wee, a former employee of Ripple. He is most likely the one you should listen to. According to him, Ripple's bank sales will greatly benefit from the ISO 2022 migration for cross-border payments. Can't you see how the stars are aligning, really? By November of this year, unless there is a delay, all SWIFT-enabled institutions will have transitioned to ISO 2022, making it simple to integrate Ripplet, even though that may not be an official name anymore. Simultaneously, the Ripple versus SEC case is coming to a complete conclusion, and Ripple has complete clarity on XRP. So it's likely that a stable coin and cryptocurrency market will be passed in the United States in the next months. As you are aware, banks are now able to hold cryptocurrency in the US, which is very beneficial for Ripple. Seeing all of this at once is incredible, and I do agree with Anderson. It's sort be crazy to see everything come together so well when we consider what's actually happening, including stablecoin laws, ongoing regulatory debates both inside and outside the US, and the XRP case coming to an end. And all of this is taking place in 2025. This is insane to witness. However, let's truly investigate some of these posts from Bob Way. First off, the reason this 2022 shift is so beneficial to Ripple's bank sales staff is that it mandates that all banks, yes, all banks worldwide, implement new technology. Banks detest altering an established procedure. Bankers may lose their jobs as a result of new issues brought about by change. This is the main reason why the majority of bank integrations fail. The development of new systems is dangerous and costly. Errors may result in fines or bank losses. Get fired, bankers. The individual you are negotiating with needs to have a product, development, or I should say, product, budget, and a risk tolerance. Additionally, there will be a necessary modification in 2022 that requires the person you are negotiating with to have a single product budget. Funds have already been allotted elsewhere for development. No one is fired for obeying a directive. This makes it considerably easier for Ripple to close the deal. Finally, it should be noted that the process of selling bank software remains challenging, particularly in light of the ongoing SEC lawsuit that adds FUD to the mix. However, even if banks wait for a settlement, Ripple will find it much easier to integrate with their 2022 enhanced system. Thus, once more, when we consider ISO 2022, this is the key that essentially unlocks all of these important systems to modernize and make it simpler to integrate with Ripple, Net, or Ripple Custody, or Ripple Payments, as you like. Yes? In this case, the key point is that blockchain integration with these conventional networks is significantly simpler. Additionally, we are aware that Payment Infrastructure News recently provided us with a significant upgrade. Community Bank First Financial in the US notifies Fedwire of the impending ISO 22 migration on July 14th. This is a big one then. And this marks the beginning of the major change. Although July 14th is the key date to watch for the Fed's wire upgrade, we will actually see the full rollout for large banks around the end of this year. In addition to that, Smoked Dogwell, you made a really good post about ISO 2022. This comes straight from Swift with Swift. Blockchains are currently based on the ISO 2022 data dictionary. Blockchain technology and ISO 2022 go hand in hand. Pay close attention. Among the many contributors is myself. Although we undertake a lot of development and maintenance work because we are a registration authority, we do not own the standard. The SWIFT network isn't the only one. Many market infrastructures employ ISO 2022, but they do not use the SWIFT network. Additionally, many institutions use ISO internally. It is therefore not limited to the SWIFT network. Although it is syntax agnostic, it is related to the XML syntax. As a result, there have been numerous advancements in the field of ISO-based APIs. Even blockchain innovations that are based on the ISO data dictionary are visible. While XML is currently used mostly for syntax, it can also be utilized in other technologies in the future, as you are aware. In a nutshell, it's a methodology for creating standards for financial messaging and presents the idealized world of universal financial messaging, which is what we're all aiming for right now with the parallel domestic and international migrations. So, when we consider what's actually happening here, we are beginning to notice a significant change, and it does include ISO 2022, of course, as a major enabler and accelerator for all of the integrations, adoption, and even large-scale use of these particular utility-based blockchains. In addition, SWIFT claims that the financial sector must first embrace ISO 2022 before implementing blockchain technology for payments. Let's have a look at this topic. This is detailed below. Additionally, blockchain technology is now being used in banking. SWIFT claims that before the financial sector can use blockchain for payments, it must first implement ISO 2022. Furthermore, Anderson acknowledged that it doesn't get any clearer than that. Because the communications is so poor, I am unable to locate a video in which David Schwartz, the CTO of Ripple, paraphrases the question, "Why can't banks use blockchain?" Swift migration in particular, ISO 2022, is a much-needed update. And yes, listen, messaging is terrible right now, especially when considering traditional-based networks and payment processing businesses. It just plain stinks. And when we consider it, we primarily consider Swift as it is the one that is actually hosting 11,000 large banks on its network and messaging system. They're just messaging, like a very crucial player. In reality, they don't settle and clear. Swift is therefore in charge of messaging. If the messaging standard, also known as ISO 22, is incorporated, it will improve messaging and, in a sense, upgrade it by enabling the integration and use of blockchains. This is really thrilling. On top of that, let's look at what's going on because big banks and enterprise companies are on board. Google, Apple X, Airbnb, and Intel are in early discussions with cryptocurrency companies to investigate stablecoin integration, while Stripe is also in early discussions with banks to use stablecoins for international payments. Furthermore, we are aware that major U.S. banks, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citigroup, and Wells Fargo in particular, are investigating the possibility of issuing a combined cryptocurrency stablecoin. Thus, all of these stablecoin activities are now underway. And I want you all to realize that this is taking place at a time when ISO 2022 is just starting to gain traction due to the fact that the deadline is approaching, correct? The upcoming adoption of ISO 2022 will open up opportunities for stablecoin projects to truly become a reality, because it also permits major institutions to introduce stablecoins on public blockchains that are connected to conventional rails. This also makes me think of what Scott Bent told us in April. We will closely examine novel payment systems, stable currency, and regulatory barriers to blockchain. Take a look. We will closely examine new payment methods, stable coins, regulatory, barriers to blockchain, and more. Additionally, we'll think about measures to unleash the incredible power of the U.S. capital markets. All Americans, especially those on Main Street, should benefit from the financial services sector. The Treasury Department and I will provide you with that under President Trump's direction. Thank you. Therefore, when we consider what is taking place here, the industry is opening its doors to blockchain. First, you know, legal barriers are being lifted, which will be the crucial factor that enables all of these major firms to truly enter the market. Additionally, the reason why banks are now investigating this is because more banks, like Banco Industrial, the biggest bank in Guatemala, are integrating blockchain to enable instantaneous, low-cost cross-border payments. All of this is taking place as a result of the US market opening up. Additionally, central banks are experimenting with blockchain-based monetary policy by employing smart contracts to automate real-time asset purchases, repos, and interest on reserves. As I mentioned earlier, if we return to the major banks, why are they suddenly investigating this? Why do they now have a strong optimistic outlook on stable coins? Because of what we heard back in March and even April, US regulators took down the obstacles that prevented US banks from using cryptocurrency. Digital asset services are now permitted by the FDIC, the Fed, and the OC without prior clearance. With the right risk controls, banks may provide custody, support cryptocurrency companies, and even use blockchain. And the reason for this is that we keep hearing from Ripple board members and former workers that stable coins are important. Similar to how the internet unbundled newspapers into Craigslist classified ads, Pinterest recipes, and Substack articles, stable coins equate to narrow banking. Banks, private companies, credit, and composable finance are all being unbundled by blockchain. There are exciting days coming. Take a look at this article, which was authored by Matt Levine. But somewhere else, thin banking appears. One significant type of stablecoin in the contemporary era. A stablecoin is a type of cryptocurrency used for banking. Dollars are deposited with a reliable coin issuer. It sends you back tokens that give you the right to get your money back. But in the meantime, it uses the money whatever it pleases. Anything it wants may be very hot in the early, uncontrolled days of cryptocurrency. Stablecoins are popular these days, though, and it's kind of standard practice to keep deposits in extremely safe short-term dollar-denominated assets, preferably treasury notes, reverse repos, or BlackRock CK money market funds. The large, established stablecoins that say, "We will take your dollars and use them to buy treasury bills," would be difficult to compete with if you launched a new stablecoin today and said, "We will take your dollars and use them to make loans" to emerging crypto entrepreneurs. This is especially true if, like most stablecoins, you didn't pay interest. So, listen, this is how the financial sector is beginning to transform. We begin to witness financial change in this way. However, the biggest thing we are looking at, and the last significant thing we need to finish, is ISO 2022. If this is not fully adopted by the end of November this year, it will open the doors for the largest banks in the world to launch and integrate blockchain-based services into their traditional business models, which will result in a flood of adoption value volume pouring into cryptocurrency. This is really exciting. It's very exciting for Ripple because, as you may recall, the company has been collaborating with these large institutional players, a crazy number of them as well, for years. However, due to these kinds of challenges, they haven't integrated the blockchain side of the tech stack. I believe that everything is going to change. I believe that everything has already begun to shift. I mean, consider where we are right now, today. All of the major conventional businesses are now investigating cryptocurrency. Now, every major bank is investigating cryptocurrency. Governments are investigating cryptocurrency at a time when regulatory debates are heating up. There are bills on the congressional floor right now. This is enormous. Having said that, I sincerely hope you all found this video entertaining. You are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below if you would like. Subscribe and turn on notifications since there is more free material. And with that, thank you for watching, Nick, guys.